we are moving on to histograms today. Histograms are very similar to bar graphs, but they're a little bit different. So we do need to talk about those because you are definitely going to see those on your end of the assessment quiz or test, as well as you will see them on the EOG. At this point, put your homework away if you didn't do it last night. Hopefully there is time today, or that's what you should have been working on this morning. Okay, so a histogram is a special type of bar graph used to show the frequency of data. In a histogram, there are no spaces between the bars. So in a bar graph, there's space in between each set of bars, correct? Or, yes, there should be spaces in between each set of bars. You'll notice today when we create a histogram, as well as when we're going over practice problems and doing our lesson, that there are no spaces in between your histograms. And the reason for that is when you make a histogram, it is helpful to group the data into ranges and let each bar show frequency. So a range is, depending on your data, it'd be like from 0 to 4, and then 5 to 9, and then 10 to 11. So it's a range. So all the numbers that fall between 0 and 4 will be in that part of the histogram. Again, when we actually do one, it'll make a little bit more sense. Remember that in a histogram, the bars must be the same range. So you can't have one set be, worth 5 numbers, and the next set be worth 20 numbers, and the next set be worth 2. All of them have to be the same equal amount. All right, and then essentially when you are creating a bar graph, you're going to sort the data into equal ranges, and then make the histogram of the data. Make sure to label all parts of the histogram. All right, questions? Does it seem, hopefully it doesn't seem like too crazy. All right, so go ahead and get this paper out. So we are going to create a histogram on our practice. All right, so the very first thing we need to do is we need to collect our data. So this is number of hours of TV watched per week. And you notice the range. So the range is 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and 20 to 24. So what that means is, like yesterday, you know how we did with dot plots? For every time there was a dot above a number, we put a tally mark. Well, today, when we're finding the frequency, it's going to be every one that is within that range from 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14. So if I'm looking at this data, how many numbers fall between 0 and 4? Like looking at your data, how many numbers are going to fall here? Alex? Just 1. So we have 4. So we're going to put 1 tally mark there. All right. 5 to 9. How many do we have? Isabella? So we have 8. And we have 5, right? So we're going to put 2 tally marks there. All right, what about 10 to 14? How many do we have? How many do we have, Ben? So we have 10 and we have 14. Okay, how about 15 to 19? Ramon? 4. Sure? Let's count them. So we have 15, 18, 17, 19, 19. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we, what is our range technically? Like how many numbers are in each one of these ranges? How many numbers are in each range? Not frequency, like how many numbers fall 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14? Real?
4.
Nope. Nope. Count it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So how big is our range for each one of these? 5. All right, and it's very important that you guys understand that yes, you must include 0. Why do we have to include 0? Why do we have to include 0?
Because if we don't, then
Okay, so think back to coordinate grid. What's always in the middle? 0. Like your range is gonna fall from 0 to whatever. Okay, so you're always starting with 0. All right, so the last one, how many hours do we have between 20 and 24? Savannah?
10.
All right, so let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so we've collected our data. Now we have to go ahead and do the labels because we have to make sure that we label everything so we know what we're doing. And we already have our groups that are in those equal ranges. So across the bottom, this is going to be number of hours. So this is where our range is going to go. And then on the side is our frequency. I totally did that backwards. Sorry. Frequency. And number of hours. Sorry guys. That's why you use a pencil, right? We don't have this ugly scratch out mark. No, that's not right. I was right the first time. Bro, hey, I'm looking at my answer key and it confused me. I had it right the first time. So essentially, and I'm sorry, but I'm gonna act like I didn't hear nobody say bruh. We're just gonna disregard that sound, right? Yes. So it's number of hours on the bottom, and then it's frequency
On the side.
on the side. I just want to draw like squiggles all over my paper, but then, you know. All right, so looking at our frequency, we have 1 all the way to what's our biggest number of tally marks? What's the biggest number of tally marks that we have? Isabel? 10. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. So we obviously don't have 10 lines, so we can't do 1 per line. So what's another good increment that we could possibly do here? 2. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then your range or your hours go across the bottom. Now, what must we make sure we do with our bar graph, or with our bars on our histogram? What do they have to do? If you don't know, read your paper over on the left side. What do they have to do? Or what can't they have? What can't they have, Sophia? spaces. So for 0 to 4, we have 1 tally. So that's gonna be about the middle of this first one. Okay? So that's 1. Alright, 5 to 9 is how many? 5 to 9 is 2. So I'm gonna go connecting to this one. I'm just gonna go straight up to 2, and I'm gonna go straight up to 2. And if you wanna put your line across, you can. So right now, what do you notice about our 2 bars that we have put on our histogram?
It's going up.
No. What do you notice about them? They are what?
Close together. Like no space.
Right, they are touching. With a bar graph, essentially, this is what a bar graph looks like, right? So there is space in between each one of these. All right, what's our frequency for 10 to 14? Levy? 2. So we're just gonna go up to 2 again. 15 to 19. It's 15, what's our frequency for 15 to 19?
5.
5, so we're gonna go up between the 4 and the 6. And obviously, these are not gonna be perfect because we are drawing them and it's gonna look a little bit, but the key point is to make sure that you are touching each bar to the one previous to it. And then the last one is what? What's the frequency in the last one? Joe?
10. So we can go all the way up.
And then just go ahead and color each one of these bars a different color, please. Where are you sitting? You in there. I told you we were going to do it. And then what might be helpful is you just writing the total above each one of these so you know what the total is. You don't have to, it's just something that is helpful. Alright, and then once you have this colored in, go ahead and glue these down in your notebook and turn the page. and make sure you title both of these. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with lesson 6. Lesson 6 is not very long. Again, it's just kind of using histograms and answering questions with it. But we are quickly going to do our warm-up that's dealing with what kind of graph. What kind of graph is this? Carter? A dot plot. So we talked about these yesterday, so again, we're going to do this part and then jump into the actual lesson. So it says, here's a dot plot showing the weights in pounds of 40 dogs at a dog show. So number 1, write 2 statistical questions that can be answered using this dot plot. And 2, what would you consider a typical weight for a dog at this dog show? Explain your reasoning. Alright, I'm gonna give you 4 minutes. Go ahead. You should be done with your graph and you should be with us on this page. If you're not done with the stuff we just did, you need to put it away and get here. you're finished, go ahead and stand up. Okay, would anybody like to share one of their statistical questions that they wrote? Arts, right? Okay. All right, anybody else?
A contestant asked 60 dog owners on how much their dog weighed.
That is not a statistical question. That is a statement. You said 60 dog members, or asked 60 dog members how much their dog weighed? I mean, that doesn't even have anything to do with what they, guys,
Or 40.
you're just using the data right here. Like, we're just coming up with questions based off of the data that we see on our dot plot. Callie, say it again. About how much is each per, okay. Does anybody else wanna share theirs?
What is the weight of every dog that is under 100?
What was the weight of every dog that weighs under 100 pounds? Okay. Alright, anybody else? If I see one more person coloring a graph, I'm going to lose my mind. We are done coloring for today. Put your papers away, please. I'm not going to ask again. We can't even come up with statistical questions, but yet we can sit here and color. Do you see my problem and my aggravation at this point? All right, what would you consider a typical weight for a dog at this dog show? So this is kind of guesstimating like we did yesterday, looking at our data and just kind of finding a number that might work that's where. Where do you think this number has to be located? Kira?
I said about 100 pounds, because that's the median, and the median is typically like about the middle of each weight.
Okay, did you find the median or you kind of guessed?
Kind of guessed.
Okay, that's fine. So, 100 pounds. And you said because it's what?
It's the median.
We'll say possibly. Because if you didn't actually find the median, are we 100% sure? Or did you find the
I don't
median?
know the median, I guessed the number.
So you went through and crossed out every dot. Okay, so then, because it's the median. That's why I asked her. Okay. Did anybody else come up with something close to that? Without doing the math, say it that way, just kind of looking at your data, what you come up with.
I said 100 or 150.
So 100 to 150,
Yeah.
okay? Why?
It just seemed reasonable.
Okay, because,
I wouldn't imagine a dog 300 pounds.
I can't spell. Seems reasonable, and that's fine. Good Lord, have mercy to their children. All right, Andrew.
I saw 100 to 120, because 100 and 120 are like close to the summer now.
All right, how many of you guys came up with a number around or between 100 to 120 or so? Okay, and that's kind of where we want to be, because essentially looking at our data, not doing the actual median, but actually just kind of looking at it between 100 and 110 is probably where we're going to be. All right, so we took the data that was on the dot plot, and they went ahead and made it into a histogram. Now, side note, this histogram is a little confusing. It's not my favorite example that I've ever seen. It's very important that this next part that you pay very, very, very close attention to. It says each bar includes the left end value. So that means this number, for example, the first one is 60. So that bar for that histogram goes from, and I'm going to write it this way, 60 to 79. Okay? Usually on histograms, they give you that value right there that I wrote. They will say 60 to 79, 80 to 99, whatever. But the way they set this up is not the most friendly, if I'll say it that way. So it's the left value, but not the right value. For example, the first bar includes dogs that weigh 60 pounds and 68 pounds, but not 80 pounds. So let's go ahead and just kind of write the value for the rest of these bars so we do not get confused. Okay, so for the next one, it's 80 to what? 80 to what? Addie? 99. The next one is 100 to what? 119. The next one is 120 to Gabby? 139. The next one is 140 to 159, and then this last one is 160 to Callie? 179. And the only reason I'm doing this is, like I said, because it's not the easiest histogram to look at it and see the value. So I just want to make sure everybody understands. Does everybody understand where we got these numbers from? Is there anybody who doesn't understand that? Okay, let's go ahead and answer some questions then. So number one, it says use the histograms to answer the following questions. How many dogs weigh at least 100 pounds? So at least 100 pounds. And remember, so like the 60 to 79 range goes up to how? Goes up to what? Goes up to what? 6. So there are 6 dogs in this category. The 80 to 99 goes up to what? 11. And then the 100 to 119, do we include that or do we not include that? And this is where you gotta kind of figure it out. Like, is it included, is it not included? Why?
Because it says at least,
Because
not
it-
over 100 pounds.
Right, because it says at least. But do we know how many dogs in this category are 100 pounds? Do we? Based off of our histogram, do we know how many dogs fall that are 100 pounds here? I'm sorry, Addie. Say it nice and loud. No, but you can look at the dot plot. So what you're going to eventually see today is histograms are really good for some things and not so good for the other things. So slide over to your dot plot and see how many dogs are at least 100 pounds. So how many dogs do we have there?
4.
4. So we're gonna put 4 right here. All right. So how many dogs weigh at least 100 pounds? What did we come up with? What did we come up with? No. Think about inequalities, because inequalities do not go away. Joe,
21.
where'd you get 21 from?
I added all of them up.
So you did 6 plus 11 plus 14. Why, or not 14, sorry, 4. Why do we have to include all of these? Why? Why are we not just doing the 100?
Because it says at least.
Right, so any dog before 100 up to 100 is included in this question. All right, how many dogs weigh exactly 70 pounds? Do we know? So not looking at the dot plot. Let's just kind of focus on the histogram. Remember I said we're only using the histogram to answer these questions. So, what do we think? How many dogs? Weigh exactly 70 pounds. Why is nobody raising their hand? It's really easy. Super easy. Marian, does it say 1? Does it say 1? Gabby?
It's hard to tell because we have a range, not a specific number. I don't know.
That's exactly it. You can't tell, can you? So it's unknown as to how many dogs are exactly 70 pounds. That's your answer.
Unknown.
Unknown, because we don't know. Based off of using a histogram, do we know the exact number of dogs that weigh 70 pounds? No. All right. C says, how many dogs weigh at least 120 and less than 160? Okay, so now we're gonna slide over here and we're gonna say, okay, this is how many? What does that look like, 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna say 5 dogs are in that category. But they have to be less than 160. So how many dogs are in the 160 category? What does it look like? What does it look like? Elizabeth?
3.
3. All right, so here, what are we doing with that 5 and that 3? Andrew? We're gonna, yep, so 5 plus 3 equals 8. Okay, so that one we were able to find, right? Does everybody understand? You look kind of confused. Do you understand? Are you sure? Okay, so just using this range right here, because it's gotta be less than 160, but it's gotta be at least 120. So you're just finding the frequency of the 120 to essentially 159. How many dogs fall in those two buckets? Okay? All right, D, how much does the heaviest dog at the show weigh? How much does the heaviest dog at the show weigh? Uh,
180.
Do we know that for sure? I mean, technically, our bar graph goes to what number? What number does our histogram goes to what number, Roma?
180.
Does it go to 180?
I'm
179. So I mean, technically, we're not exactly sure, but we do know that we have a dog up to what? 179. So, not exactly sure, but 179 is the heaviest we can see. Alright, so E says, what would you consider a typical weight for a dog at this show? Explain your reasoning. So looking at our histogram, what would be our typical weight? What do you think? Looking at the histogram, what would be the typical weight? Alright, hold on. Let's get some movement in our class today. So stand up if you say between 60 and 79. Stand up if you say between 80 and 99. Stand up if you say between 100, 110. Stand up if you say between 120 and 149. Stand up if you say 140 to 159. And stand up if you say 160 to 179. So we all agree that the range, because we don't know again for sure where that middle is, but the range would be, so between 100 to 119. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? All right, flip your paper over. All right, so number 2. We're not going to discuss this with a partner. We're just kind of going to discuss this out loud. So if you use the dot plot to answer the 5 questions you just answered, how would your answers be different? So how would our answers be different if we, like we started out with, we like referred back to that dot plot real quick because we got a better, more specific answer? All right, Sophia, what do you think?
Just like you said, you would be able to have more specific answers instead of not having specific answers.
Okay, so what is a very big difference between dot plots and histograms? It's a very big difference, Levy.
One's more accurate. It's not.
One is more accurate than the other. One gives you exact number of however many dogs weigh that amount, and one gives you a range. All right? So tell me something that is the same about them. What's the same about them? Because there are a few things that are the same. Elizabeth?
That the dot plot and the histogram, they both
Okay, so
number ranges.
okay, so maybe their patterns are similar, the shape of their pattern. Okay, I can go with that. Isabella? Say that one more time. Yes, they both can answer statistical questions. Okay, we can both collect a variety of data using a dot plot and a histogram to answer a statistical question. Bryson,
Commercial plot stuff. Like what we just did.
so you can plot, so essentially they're both dealing with plotting information and data. Okay, I can go with that.
Sort of like Elizabeth was talking about, they both have the exact same information, but it's just a different way to graph it.
Okay, so same information, different ways of graphing. Okay, does anybody else see anything that is different?
Same range of numbers.
Okay, so that's something that's the same, so they use the same range of numbers. All right, anything else you guys want to add? Okay, so stand up if you like dot plots better than histogram. So apparently everybody does.
No.
You don't? Why not?
I like the dot plot stuff because you have more in-depth of the
That's what I
answers.
just said.
Oh, I thought you said, I totally thought you said.
Alright, I feel like it really depends on the data that you're looking at and the questions that you're answering as to which one is better or worse. So, yes, dot plots are definitely more accurate, more specific, but I wouldn't say that they're better than the others. Again, it just depends. Now, on your cool down today. You have, I know it looks like two, but you actually have, you're gonna use the table that's on the top to help you answer number 1 and number 2. Number 2 says complete the table and use it to make a histogram. Now, I understand that there's no lines going across, so if it's not exactly accurate, you're not gonna get it taken off. Excuse me. But you can't have, like, if there's, for like 2, if there is only 1 and you got it sitting at like 3 or 4, obviously that's gonna be marked wrong. So please try to be as accurate as possible. You can use the notes we took today. You can use the lesson that we went over today to help you with this. Please make sure that you turn this in when you are finished. Also, please make sure that you answer number 2. We have a really hard time with answering both questions, some of us, so there are 2 questions on the sheet. There are 2 questions, there are 2 questions, I don't see why I see people write. Why are you drawing giant lines on your paper? That is gonna make it so much harder for me to see what is a bar and what is a line. Alright, any questions before you leave your eyes on your book? Oh, see? God bless me. Alright, go ahead, get started. Make sure you turn it in when you're finished. And then when you're done,